Hi, you found part two of the discussion, homeschooling from high school to college. In this video, we'll discuss homeschooling the student athlete, the performing artist, and college admissions from a test optional perspective. We're going to
Thank
move
you.
on now to Nicola Johnson, who is going to share her experiences with preparing her son for NCAA admissions. Definitely something that those of us who do consulting or are veterans in homeschooling get questions about a lot. So we're going to highlight or spotlight Nicola.
Hi, I'm Nicole Johnson. I've been homeschooling for about 15 years. I have 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl, and I'm going to be talking to you about how to prepare your child for the journey through NCAA, specifically for basketball. Corn, my older one, was playing football, and he actually did a lot of his stuff by himself. Just, things that were going on health-wise in the family. He just had to do a lot. And I'm not a football proponent. So, but he was successful and played Division III football at Stevenson University. The son that I was totally involved with was Cortland. And he expressed a desire to play college basketball early on, probably about 10th grade. And we just kind of helped walk him through that. I just have some notes here, homeschool sports to college sports. One of the main things is for your student to decide, just to have a conversation with them about what that looks like. So, if you have people in your sphere of influence that have played college sports, because the story is the same for all the sports. If you have somebody in your sphere that has played college sports, have them, just have a heart to heart with them about what the needs are, what they'll have to do, how they'll have to manage their time. When you're working on your high school program, try and get your child as much involved with that instead of you setting the pace. You need to do school at this time. Just try to help them manage their time, because that is basically what they're going to have to be doing when they go to school, not just with their classes, but now they're going to have to handle practice, game time, those kinds of things. There are 4 different entities that child can play. They can play with the NCAA, which is what everybody knows, Division I, Division II, Division III. There's also the NAIA, which has a Division I and Division II, and those are at smaller schools. Seem to be most of them are in the Midwest. There is one here, the Adventist University in Tacoma Park is an NAIA school. If they still want to play sports and don't want to play under those, under that heavy burden, they need to check and see if the school they're interested in has intramural or club sports. So they're just basically playing for fun. With the NCAA, there is money involved at that level. The NAIA, there are also scholarship monies. For intramural and club, there are no monies. And again, as Michelle was saying, you really have to get online and do your research. If there's something that a question you don't find an answer to, email coaches, email admissions, and they have been more than helpful. And also during the email, it gives you a running record of who you've talked to and what information they have given you, so that if you get conflicting information when you actually speak to someone on the phone, you can refer back. One of the main things you have to do is find a high school in your area that will allow your child to play that sport. In our area, there are 2 schools I can think of, but, and also, we're hoping that this video will go nationwide. Some counties, some states do allow homeschool students to play with their public school team. So if that's what happens in your area, just make sure you contact those coaches and find out, again, your timeliness, find out when tryouts are, what's needed, so forth and so on. Investigate if that school is NCAA certified. The NCAA certifies each school academically. If the school is not NCAA certified and you play for that school, that could disqualify you from participating in the NCAA college program at the Division I and Division II level. Division III level is different in that they do have standards, but they're not as strict as Division I and Division II schools. Again, investigate their criteria for homeschoolers. Most importantly, what is the cost to play? I've paid anywhere from $500 to $1,500 per year per student. So that will also be a deciding factor for you. And also find out what is included in that cost. Are uniforms included? Is the equipment included? Is travel included? And again, that'll help you budget and decide, what program is for you. Some schools will require you to take a class or 2 or 3 or 4 at that institution. That was the deciding factor. We had one school we investigated. They wanted all the major classes. So you're reading, writing, and arithmetic taken at that school. Well, I homeschool because I want to have some say in that. It also depends on the enrollment at that school. If they have a low enrollment in a particular year, they're more than happy to have homeschoolers come because it's an extra stream of income for them. And also find out what info you need to submit to the school on a quarterly or yearly basis so that they will continue to be in compliance with the NCAA. Usually it's a transcript. It's usually a letter from your umbrella group or from whatever group is overseeing your homeschooling journey. Sometimes they ask for a letter of recommendation, and they usually need an updated grade report every quarter, or according to how they require grades from their students. And then lastly, investigate if there are prospect camps for your sport. So you're not only playing sports at the school, but you're also looking ahead to see where colleges are gathering to look at other high school athletes. I say investigate yourself because a lot of time communication is given to the student body, but because you're not on campus at that school, you might miss those pieces of information. Again, if you're in direct communication and constant communication with the coaches, and your kid is coachable and likable and also in communication with the coaches, you usually do get that information. As your child goes further on, say by 11th grade, if they have an idea of what they want to study, I encouraged my children to let's start investigating what universities have your major. Once we do that, then we look to see if they have their sport and what level. Is it a D1 level, D2, D3? I always advise people to look at the major first, because if your child gets injured during their tenure there at the school, is that a school they're going to want to continue to stay at and be a part of that student body and be a part of that subject material? The main point is we're using sports to have an additional avenue to get into the school. Just like Michelle was talking about, having your Eagle Scouts, volunteerism, all those things. This is just another tool and another way for your student to get into the school. I'll say right now, full rides are few and far between. They are few and far between. And you usually only see that at a D1 school, and that is if your student is, ranked, has a state ranking. Realistically, if money is going to be offered, it will be a combination of athletic money, what we call athletic money, and academic money. At D1 and D2, most scholarships are a mix of athletic and academic money. At D3 schools, they are academic scholarships only. At the NAIA schools, it is a mix of both. Therefore, you're looking at the criteria for your major. making sure they have the high school classes. My son is going for engineering, so his high school classes were very heavy in math and science. The SAT and ACT scores are extremely important. Once you go onto the NCAA website, you will see grids where they talk about if they have X score, if they have a 2.0, they need almost, I could think like a 1400 for the SAT. It's proportional. It's not if they have a high GPA, they need a high SAT. It's if they have a low GPA, they will need a high SAT. The SAT also figures into the academic scholarships that the schools are willing to offer. So that was very important for us. Also, again, once they have decided what schools they want to look at, and there's one website that a group that I'm a part of, that the principals there recommend you have a list of 30 schools. The wider your list, the more you can pare it down, instead of starting with 5 schools and then finding out that you don't meet the criteria, or their team does not require, they're not looking for prospects for their team that year. You investigate, again, prospect camps for your sport. Check the schools that you are looking at to see if they have prospect camps. So you're meeting that coach, you're seeing the flow of the school, you're making a visit to the school, so you're killing 2 birds with 1 stone and seeing if you're a good fit for that team. If you decide to go the NCAA route, you will need to go and download something called the Homeschool Toolkit. At this point, it's like a 32-page document that walks you through exactly what you need to do for the homeschooler the homeschooler that is applying for NCAA certification. I really recommend you read through that entire document before you register your child. Have your child read through the entire document so they understand what needs to go into this, the work that you'll be doing and putting in. If your child is interested in a Division I or Division II school, the documents that you produce here are going to be very important. And understand you will submit these documents after they complete 11th grade. The documents will sit at the NCAA until a coach requests your child's information. So that's Division I or Division II. The coach will put them on a list. NCAA will at that point review your documents and tell you if there are any changes you need to make to be certified. I'm not at this point going to go into the exact classes you need. They really follow along your state requirements of, say, for English, to history, so forth and so on. But all that information is outlined in the homeschool toolkit. There are also several Facebook groups that I'm a member of, one notably educating parents of high school athletes on the college recruiting process. Educating parents of high school athletes on the college recruiting process. That site is run by Coach Renee Lopez, who is a seasoned coach, and she is very adept at dealing with the NCAA. That will lead you into a couple of other websites that you can get information from, not only coaches and counselors that are currently in the NCAA system, but other parents that have gone through the system. I will say it was a tedious process, but it was also very pleasurable to see my child excel at his chosen sport. To go through the process of him going to these camps and seeing that, wow, he really is good. He is talented. There also, in each sport, there will be summer camps also that your child can go to, where college coaches will come to those camps. So if cost is a factor, and going to visit all these different schools proves difficult financially or time-wise, it's also always best to search for camps where you have several college coaches coming. So they'll see your kid playing sports, doing drills, and so forth, and they can contact you that way. Other than that, feel free. I'm sure Nicole will be sharing our personal information, and you can, just contact me if you have other further questions about the process. But again, the earlier you start, again, as Nicole said, start with the end in mind, looking at, ultimately what your kid's going to do. I definitely, just as an aside, I had Cortland do a dream board this in January of this year, just for him to dream, because sometimes the schools that we think they won't get into, or the schools we don't think they will qualify for academically or even athletically, he actually did. He dreamt, and this was the school he wanted to go to, and he was able to get in and get a spot on the team. So with that being said, Nicole, I guess you can take it back, unless there are any questions that you have for me.
Okay, absolutely. Thank you so much, Nicola, for sharing that. I do have a couple questions, actually 3 questions that were sent to me for you specifically. One
Okay.
of them was how do, well, you answered this a little bit. How do homeschoolers get scouted in their preparation for college sports? Because I think people who don't know think it's all about, like, because they play sports and there's scouts hiding in the stands.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. You have to be deliberate in what you do. And then with my son, remember, he had an injury his junior year. Needed surgery. So we were like, okay, this is just not going to happen. So we had to be deliberate. And you get a lot of people talking in your ear. Your kid can go to Division I. Your kid can go to Division II. I want my kid to graduate at the end of 4 years and be able to be self-supporting. That was our goal, to find a program which was going to support him academically, and academically first and athletically next. If he had a class that he needed to go to, and that was when practice was, is he going to have to make a choice? And so that really led us to the Division III component, because they stress academics over athletics, so much so that they get the kids academic, they get everybody's schedule, and they schedule practices around the team's class schedule.
Oh, that's great.
They have free tutoring. The kids are accountable. If they don't make they're checking up on them every 2 weeks. But back to the scouting, the question you asked, we had to, once we have identified the schools that he was interested in, we then email the coaches and said, hey, here's my kid. And start videotaping your kid 9th grade. Start videotaping. I'm talking to people now who their kid is going into 11th grade, and they're just expressing that they have a desire to play, and they have not taped one game. But when you're sending emails to these coaches, you're also sending a link to a YouTube page or a Huddle. Huddle is another, HUDL is another tool that sports teams use to upload videos for their kids. Because the coach is getting hundreds, if not thousands, of emails. They want to just be able to click on something, see your highlights, and say, this kid interests me. Let me reach out, or let me see where he's playing. So we were intentional. We had him go to a thing called Hoop Group, which is, I don't know if it's just in the East Coast for basketball, but we went to a Hoop Group academic camp. So you knew everybody there had a 3.0 or higher. So they weren't going to have a problem getting into whatever college they applied to because they had the GPA. And then there were Division II and Division III coaches there. You could see who the coaches were. You could, and I told him to focus. I said, these are the schools you're interested in. Their coaches will be here. Look for their shirt. Walk up to them. Shake their hand. Hi, I'm Cortland. I played, I'm interested in your school. I'm interested in studying engineering at your school. And just the coaches actually said to me, your kid went and shook everybody's hand. He shook the opposing team's hand. He shook the referee's hand. That's something that stood out to them, which makes me see that everybody wasn't doing it. And so he's stuck in their mind. And so we did that. We also, some of the schools that were not there, if they were having what they call a prospect camp, where they're just looking for kids in 11th and 12th grade, we did spend the time and the money and go to those schools, because now the coaches are just looking at 50 kids. And they're taking you on a tour of the school, and you're talking about what are your dreams, what are your hopes. They're talking to the parents. So we did that, and so he was admitted to the 5 that he applied to, and then we, narrowed it down. Now, when the reason I mentioned Coach Lopez is that site was very instrumental in us making a decision. She had something called she calls it the broken leg test, where you're asking yourself, okay, do I actually like this campus? Do I like the class sizes? Do I like the food? It came down to that for us. We were looking at places like a great school, but the food sucks. Because if they're not going to eat in the cafeteria, that means they're going to be eating off campus, which is an extra expense for you, because you do want your kid to eat. You do want them to be healthy. I mean, they're going to be, that's one thing kids forget to do. They forget to eat. But when they do remember, you want them to have nutritious food. So, those are the things you look at. And you're seeing the campus outside of the open houses, because open houses are shows. And they are very well put together productions. So when you go up there for a camp, you're seeing the campus for what it is. So we did that, and just a lot of emailing back and forth. Have your child email or have yourself email as the child to ask questions. That's the other thing. They want to see that the kid really wants this opportunity, and it's not just the parents.
Okay. Great. So I had one last question, and this is going to be a question for you too, Kelly. So maybe start thinking about the answer to this. When you're in a situation, so to differentiate between what the three of us are talking about, in terms of our students' experience, and Kelly, you probably had this experience with Kristen, or the big school academic focus experience with Kristen, but thinking about why you're here today and what Nicola is talking about with NCAA, our experience to apply to colleges and just be told no because the pool is competitive, or your GPA is not as high as somebody else's, or your package on paper is a dime a dozen or whatever, is one thing. But when you're applying and you're in an audition situation or a tryout situation or whatever, one of the questions that came to us was, how do you as the parent help your child manage the disappointment of the no? So Nicola, can you speak to that? And then Kelly, I'm going to ask you that too. How do you manage the disappointment of the no? If when Courtney worked really hard and went to a tryout and that coach was like, we don't have a space for you here, and maybe you didn't experience that, but I'm just wondering if he did experience that, how do you deal with that? And with that, how do you deal with the stress that they go through? So a mom sent this to me specifically this morning. How do you manage the stress that they self-impose with regards to gotta get it, we need everybody to accept me because all the kids want to have choices, right? So they all want to have choices, and they think they all have this fantasy of being wanted by everybody and then having to, being able to choose where they go. So how did you guys manage the stress of even the possibility of being told no or being rejected?
Right. We, I think with him, because I was driving him back and forth, and sometimes it was like a 2-hour drive, we would just talk on the way up. What are your expectations? What do you think's going to happen? You know, and we kind of role played what would happen if this particular person said this or said that, or, you know, so we would kind of role play, and just trying to help him manage his expectation. And also that everything is an opportunity. Everything is a stepping stone. You know, we just kind of looked at it like kind of like an interview. I mean, knowing that you're not going to be offered every job, but if you are offered a job, accept it with humility, and just do your best. Put everything you have on the table. Do your best. If you do that, then you know you've done your best. There's no regrets, no take backs. This is a once in a lifetime thing, and we just treated everything as an experience. And he just seemed to really genuinely have fun. Didn't apply when it got down time to, okay, we need to pick, and we started trying to apply some pressure there. That's when I saw a little kind of breakdown. And you know, honestly, there was one school that, you know, he kept saying, well, I got time, I got until May 1st. And I was like, no, really you don't, because there are a lot of people competing here. And unfortunately, we had the school that he wanted to go to. I mean, we were literally looking for the no. He was looking in his phone, because I said, look, if this is a school you want to go to, you need to let them know. Just let them know. Then we'll let everybody else not know that you don't want to go. And he was literally looking for the number to call, and got a call that they had filled their spots.
Wow.
And he said, I said, well, you know, I let him have his few minutes. And I said, well, how did you feel? He said, I feel like I got gut punched. And I was like, okay. I said, so now what? He says, well, I know who my second choice is, so let me call them. And he called them, and he had a really nice conversation. And, you know, truth be told, the second choice was a school we really wanted. So I really feel like God intervened, and he closed the door, which was our prayer. Open the doors that need to be open, close the doors that need to be closed. And now he's fine. He's doing his workouts, and he's, you know, just preparing mentally to go. But yeah, I just feel if they do their very best, then there are no regrets. They are a commodity, and that's the other thing I also told him. And I've told all my kids, you are a commodity. They need you, because without you, as we're seeing with these schools, if they don't have a class, they may fold. The money they pay or they get or whatever is keeping these schools afloat, and you will be a blessing to. So, you know, so you just speak positively into them, and just kind of go on, just kind of go on their thing. So all in all, it was good, except for that one gut punch. But other than that, I think it was flexible.
They're gonna have those.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing, Nicola. I appreciate you. You gonna hang around with Kelly?
Yeah, I'll hang around. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So Kelly, you're spotlighted next, and your name.
Well, she's not gonna answer the question.
I'll answer that question.
Yeah, and then I'll close out with our story, which kind of segues off of Kelly's.
Okay.
Okay, I'll introduce myself first. I'm Kelly Blake. I have 4 children, been homeschooling for about 15 years. My oldest is 2020 is a big year for us because everybody is turning big ages. So the oldest is turning 21. Woo. The next one is turning 18 on Mother's Day, and 16 on Monday, and my youngest is turning 13 in August. So we've been homeschooling for the most part. Well, we've been homeschooling the whole time. We took 1 year off. But to answer the question that Nicole just asked in terms of disappointments, the platform I'm speaking about today is performing arts, specifically for my daughter, musical theater. And so that means auditions, and no, you hear no a lot whenever you audition for anything. It could be you may have gotten the major part you wanted, or you just got an ensemble part that you didn't get that major part. So no is something that auditioners kind of have to learn how to deal with early on. And then when it came to the college process, musical theater and performing arts is probably the only type of majors where you have to literally apply to 15 to 20 schools. And it was an intense process, but it was a lot of fun. To stick with that question, yes, we had a few disappointments where, well, let me back up and say, my daughter went into it with really realistic expectations, and she's a practical, logical thinker. So she knew that some of the schools were pie in the sky, and some of them were more dancey, and she's more acting and singing strong. So she had an expectation of, well, you know, I'm not probably may not get into the bigger dancey schools. So when those rejections came for some of them, although she did get into a dancey school, but one of the bigger ones that she wanted to get into, she kind of, you know, had already expected somewhat of that, but she went for it anyway. So I think, again, recognizing, like Nicola said, the Lord closes doors and he opens doors for a reason, and he has the place picked out for them. And we definitely talked a lot about that. And then with musical theater too, there were places where you auditioned for, they consider you for musical theater, acting, and dance. And there was a program where we didn't really realize they were considering her for all three separately. And so she got into an acting program, but not into the musical theater program. And we were like, huh? We didn't know you were even doing that. So that was a little bit of a, like a blow, because we were like, we didn't want just acting. But then they were giving her lots of money for just acting. So we had to figure out, like, what do you want to do? So I have a little outline. Peyton and I, my daughter, put together a little video of the two of us talking about the whole audition process. So for this portion of the video, I'll stick with just a few of the major points that I think are important for people to know. And then if anyone's really interested, you can go ahead and watch the video that will be attached with my daughter and I talking more specifics. But early on, I think the key is, everyone has said early on, my daughter did musical theater for fun starting at 12, and you know, it was just something we went to. We enjoyed as a family going to shows, such and such. And then she had a chance to be in a homeschool theater production, one that we would go and see. And then she said, I want to try that. And I said, okay. I forgot to sign her up that next year. And then the year after that, we got in. She did it, she loved it. And then about 10th grade, she said, I think this is what I want to do. I want to do musical theater. And of course we were like, huh, okay. We had to get our minds around that. And that's another thing that the Lord he had to prepare us as parents to let her do what she wants to do with her life. Who are we to stop her from doing that? Because of course my first thoughts were, financially, that's not going to be stable. And of course, now that this pandemic is happening, that's even more of a concern. But you know, we just leave it in the hands of the Lord. What helped us to be at peace about it was so many people who would see her perform and come up to me individually or my husband individually and just say, man, my eyes always went to her, and things like that. So I had to get feedback from other people, because yeah, she sings and everything like that, but I didn't see what other people who are in that industry saw. They saw something. So we kind of said, okay. And also the bigger piece was her drive for it. She just, if she's doing something, usually it is musical theater related, either researching on YouTube, researching colleges, scouring all the playbills. Anytime we've been to a play, she knows where those actors went to school. She's researched all the schools. Like, she just was so driven and passionate about this that there was kind of it was pretty obvious that this is what she not only wants to do, but she has such a passion for it and such a hunger for it, and this is what her interest is. So there's no need in us fighting it, because it just wouldn't make sense, just stress all around. And we didn't. So in terms of choosing a school, like some of the other moms said, we didn't limit her in terms of her location, but she already wanted to stay on the East Coast. The furthest school she looked at was Oklahoma City. But again, for the same reasons Michelle said, we wanted to be able to get to both of our kids. My oldest is at NC State, and my Peyton is going to Point Park in Pittsburgh. So both about 4.5 hour drives, and it makes us feel at peace that we can get to them should something be going on. We can, drop them off, pick them up, what have you. I would say that getting started in musical theater, any performing arts, needs to happen. She decided about 10th grade, like I said, and she was very clear. She ran this train really for us because she had such a vision. She was clear, Mom and Dad, I need to do 4 shows every school year. We were like, what? We're used to doing 1. And she's like, no, I need to do 4. And we're like, okay, well, we're homeschoolers. I don't really know where you're going to find that, but she found it. She found all the community theaters. She found a couple of other we had one homeschool theater called Stage Light Productions in our area. That is in Columbia. There's Children's Theater of Annapolis. There's the Talent Machine. There's a Bowie. The name's escaping me right now. But she found, so we worked with 5 different production companies in our area for her to be able to get those 4 shows a year that she wanted to have to build her resume. So that was one thing, the building of the resume. Of course, private lessons, we had to find that out, and she's been taking private voice lessons for the last 2 years or so, once a week, or we started off doing bi-weekly, because it is all, expensive. I would say that whenever we didn't have the advantage, of course, of being in a high school and her being able to do high school shows, but it was an advantage, a disadvantage, but really it was an advantage for her, because she was then competing with a larger group of auditioners. So community theater, and they had, I would say their shows are definitely more quality than the typical high school show. So in that way, it was actually an advantage for her. Let's see, there are definitely summer workshops and intensive classes for dancing and things like that. She did dance every year. We could not afford the opportunity for her to do summer camps and things like that. So we just didn't do it. And she was very gracious and not even asking, because she knew that just wasn't in the budget for us. So we just had to let those things go and be at peace with it. She was choosing the BFA musical theater, which is a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree. Let me see if we follow how she chose her schools. Like I said, we were advised to apply to 15 to 20 schools. In the end, she applied to 16, I think. And the way she chose her schools was based on location, based on the program that she liked or didn't like. She did lots and lots of research of individual schools to see if she talks about all of this in the video, but there are cut schools and there are different kinds of programs. And so she chose the ones that she wanted to apply to based on the things that she wanted, also the weather, also food, as Nicola said. We visited early because I thought, whoa, there's no way we're going to be able to visit 15 to 20 schools. So the spring break of her sophomore year, we knocked out about 2 or 3 schools that were, driving distance. And we visited their musical theater departments, got the tours and all that. And that was, you know, we did that early because we could say, okay, is this going to be one of your 15 or 20? Let's figure this out now. If you don't even like this area, if you don't like the school, if you just don't gel with this campus, things like that. The application process, again, starting really, really early. We were actually waiting for schools to put their applications on because she was just ready to go. So we were waiting for August 1st for applications to actually open up to these schools because she was ready to write her essays and fill out all the things. So Common App, with musical theater and performing arts, there's something called Get Accepted, which is like the Common App for performing arts students, and it was wonderful. There's more about that on the other video. She needed letters of recommendation, of course, from those people who she had been working with, the producers, the vocal directors, of course, some of her tutors, her voice teacher. So different schools wanted different letters of recommendation. Some wanted just 2 academics, some wanted academics as well as a performing arts recommendation. So like Michelle and Nicola and everyone has already been saying, research the school, and the Common App actually is extremely helpful because it lists exactly the schools that you say you want to apply for. All the requirements are right there, so it makes it easier for you. Let's see. There's something called pre-screens, which that is the beginning of the whole process you can apply, which we applied early, like Michelle said. We kind of followed a lot of Michelle's formula with our older daughter as well, with dual enrollment and all those kinds of things. But we're doing the same thing with our other daughter. We did our dual enrollment in senior year. But the pre-screen is a big thing. You have to video yourself, whether you're a dancer or an actor or a singer. For Peyton, she had to do sometimes 2 monologues, 3 songs, and a dance. So we had to find somewhere for her we weren't taking dance at that time, so we had to find a studio for her to be able to practice in and also record herself. We found some places, will charge you. We were able to go to the local college, Bowie State, and use their facility in between classes. So she had to kind of sit and wait, or she was in there and other students came in and they were like, I need this studio. So that was a lot to do. And the saying is pre-screen before Halloween. Therefore, before October 31st, you want to have submitted all of your pre-screens. So you need to select your songs, have your dance choreographed, have your monologue picked out, rehearsed, and all of that rehearsed and ready to go for it to be recorded so that your pre-screen can be sent off. In terms of recording, I just used my handy dandy cell phone to record my daughter when she did her monologues, when she did her singing. And some people had like big old cameras and things like that. We just went with what we had. And it was fine. Let's see. Oh, also you will need an accompanist who will be able to play the piano for you while you're recording your monologue. So at the time she was doing a performance at the Children's Theater of Annapolis. So we just said, hey, can you guys open up a little earlier before rehearsal today? And we asked the musical director, would you be willing to play for us? And of course we paid her, and everyone was just if you're in that industry, those people they know what you need to do. They're ready to work with you. They understand. We had to play the song 10,000 times. And then when we got it and we looked at it, the lighting was all wrong and highlighted all the terrible places. So we had to do it all over again. And that's just, thank goodness we did it in time, early enough so that we had time to do it over again in a different dress and adjust the lighting and all that kind of thing. Little things that you just, may not think about. So the pre-screens are where you send that to the college. based on your pre-screen, they will then invite you or not to come and do a live audition for them. So she was invited back to all but 3 maybe to do her live audition. And those things were, there's lots of celebration times with that. It seemed like that was almost like, yay, we got in, because if you passed the pre-screen, you were doing something, because there's so many people applying. It's huge. And with the Get Accepted app, which is similar to Common App, it makes it so much easier to apply, but it raises the competition level because now so many more people are applying because it's easier. So there's just, the numbers are phenomenal. Basically, they're saying we're taking 24 students, 12 girls, 12 boys, and there are 5,000 applicants. So if you pass the pre-screen, we were like, woohoo! So we had a lot of celebrating along the way. And then when the actual, after we went to auditions and those actual decisions came back, you know, we were just happy to have been invited to some of them to audition. Let's see. Oh, there's an audition book. My daughter talks about that in the other video, so I won't get into that. I will say the travel time for doing the live auditions is something that you definitely need to plan for. Money-wise, this whole thing is pretty expensive. My daughter, because you have to do an application fee, of course, for like any normal college application. You also, there's a pre-screen fee, which is the same as an application fee in terms of amounts. So ranging from $60 to $100. So she actually found a church that paid for 10 of her application fees. So that was an expense that we didn't have to bear. We were grateful because we were like, when she told me the process, and she was very gentle with me because she had done all the research, she kind of slowly and incrementally told me what was going to be involved before we got anywhere near this process. So when we got there, I knew what we needed to do. I was able to pretty much follow her lead. And get back to the travel though, once those pre-screens have been passed, is how they term it, then you need to schedule your live audition ASAP, because the schedules fill up quickly. And that's also another reason why you want to pre-screen before Halloween. The earlier you get your pre-screen in, the sooner you'll hear back a decision whether you're invited to do a live audition or not. And once you hear back, and if it's affirmative, you schedule your audition. You can go to the school, or you could do what's called a unified auditions. Unified auditions are held in LA, New York, and Chicago. We thought, oh, we'll just go to New York and knock out all the ones that we don't want to drive to the school itself. We'll go to New York and knock out the rest. Well, we learned pretty quickly that those slots just fill up. And so we had to also go to Chicago. And so we went to several schools to do the live auditions, the ones that we hadn't visited already and we wanted to see, and then a few that we thought we would go to, but their slots were already full, so we ended up doing them at Unifieds. While I'm on Unifieds, I'll just say a quick blurb. If anyone's in this industry, you'll hear different things about Unifieds. You'll hear, oh, you maybe shouldn't go to Unifieds because they don't pay as much attention to you as if you go to the school, and things like that. You'll hear people might try to steal your book and things like it is a crazy environment, but I held on to all her books and things because they were saying some people might try to sabotage you. I don't know. I didn't see any of that going on, but maybe. So we just took precautions, and I always watched her things whenever she had to go change or go do something else. But we loved our Unifieds experience. It was different from the being on campus experience. And on campus, you really couldn't, we didn't get to tour the campus like we thought, because we spent all day auditioning, but they were still great. I mean, musical theater is such an intimate industry, and the professors, the heads of the departments, they really want to get to know you. They want to know your student. They make themselves available, of course, at the schools, but also at some of the unified auditions. They still had question and answer segments set aside for parents and for students so that you could get all the information you wanted to know. And at those, sometimes there were places, as much as they are auditioning you, you are auditioning them as well. We went to one school and we were like, I don't want to make this drive ever again. And this, we just didn't like it. So we were like, well, if you get in here, great, but really we don't want to come back here, whatever it was. Also, there was an audition in New York with one of the schools that during the Q&A, they just didn't sell themselves well. And they just seemed like they were like, you probably shouldn't come here. And we were like, okay, we won't. So we just kind of just didn't even, we finished the process, but there were some that, so even of that list of 16 or however many schools, there were some that we were like, no, we don't really want to go here. But if we get in, I guess if that's our only choice, we will, but we just didn't really like it. So go into your auditions with definitely checking the school out, the staff out, the students out as much as they're checking you out. I think, but the scheduling of the trips was hairy. We had to cancel auditions to schedule another audition because it was only offered at this certain time, and then reschedule the audition that we had to cancel. So all of that was the craziest part, I think, of the process. And again, applying very early, getting your pre-screen in early will help with that. At Unified, there's an opportunity for you to do walk-in auditions, which is very cool. We didn't know about that until we were in New York and we saw someone else doing it. And she was like, I just did a walk-in here and there. We were like, what is she talking about? So then we learned that you can just ask a school. It's like being at a huge college fair where they have a representative sitting outside of the auditioning room. In New York, the Unifieds was held at a studio and all of the schools were there. In Chicago, it was held at a humongous hotel, and musical theater students were crawling all over the humongous hotel, and parents were all over the humongous hotel waiting and doing those things. So I just happened to walk around and saw a school that we hadn't applied to, but was on her initial list, but then she dropped it off, and I thought, oh, what's the harm in asking? So I said, do you have any walk-in auditions available? And she said, yes, for tomorrow we do. So I said, okay, let me check with my daughter. She said, yeah, let's do it. More so for fun, not necessarily to go to that school, but the more audition experience you get, the better, because every audition has the possibility to be very different. So she did that, and she ended up liking her process there, and then she ended up applying to that school after the audition. So that was kind of done backwards, and she got into that school. So Unifieds can be, a great place to just go and do something you didn't expect to do. Also for people who, if you weren't able to schedule your audition, if you ran out of space, the schedule filled up before you were able to schedule your audition, walk-ins could be the place for you to do that. So some students and their families were there just to do walk-ins because they weren't able to schedule their auditions beforehand. Let's see. Keeping track of everything. We just did a huge Google spreadsheet to keep track of all of the little details. What school wanted what, who sent in who we asked for a recommendation, who sent it in already. Of course, the Common App has some of those things too. What schools wanted for their pre-screen, because as I said, some schools want certain things. You need to have a song that's, I don't know the term, classical, or more contemporary. Different schools wanted different things, monologues from a certain time period and things like that. So on our sheet, we had listed out what school wanted what, when they were due by, and all of those things. So I would say make sheets your friend and use it a lot. I think we've already talked about the acceptances and rejections, just having realistic expectations. One thing, and I think this is for any college student, you get your notifications via email. So you might just be going to check your email for something else, and suddenly you see a decision is in from such and such a school, and you weren't prepared for that. So you can either, sometimes the email is right there, hey, congratulations, or thank you for auditioning, or whatever. So we had to just be prepared for whenever we checked our email that there might be some happy news or some not so happy news. So we're kind of, I know my daughter, first thing she did in the morning when she woke up was to check her email. And then throughout the day, you know, it was just, okay, let me brace myself whenever I check my email. So because something could be there that I don't want to see or that I want to see. So at the end of the day, her personal decision, she's going to Point Park in Pittsburgh, like I said, came down to her personal vibe. She loved her audition experience, which she did at a unified audition in Chicago. The head of the department was there. She was, and the accompanist, and usually in the audition, it's the head of a department, the accompanist, and maybe one other person. But the head of the department, and she had a really great conversation. She just really thought she would like to work with that head of the department. Location, she liked the city, but she also wanted a small school. So she had an opportunity to be in the city with a bigger school, but she preferred the smaller feel. She also based the schools that she selected based on Billboard's top 10. And the school that Point Park is in the top 10. So that was part of her decision. And then financials, of course, we had to do letters of appeal and say, okay, well, this school is giving us this much money. Can you match that? So at the end, it came down to basically money and her vibe for the school. And we couldn't be happier with where she's going to end up. We're super thrilled about it. I think that covers all of what I want to say. And as I said, there's another video with Peyton actually talking more specifics.
Thanks so much, Kelly. So, you know, the musical theater and acting and dance and all the performance auditioning kind of things are again with NCAA one of those things that a lot of times homeschoolers think are outside of our reach because we don't have the high school drama teacher, we don't have the high school musical experience and all that kind of stuff. So I really appreciate you being here to talk about that. And I do want to make sure that the viewers know that we're going to attach Kelly's video. We're going to try to I'm going to have Nicola do her video, and Kelly's going to do one, and then I'll do one with my daughter too, so we can talk some more about some decisions that she made, and they'll be attached to these somehow. I'm not the technical person, I don't know how that works, but you'll be able to find them easy. I'm going to segue, I'm going to be last, of course, but also wanted to segue from Kelly specifically because my daughter also is working on a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree. However, she is a Bachelor of Fine Arts creative writing major, and a big part of her decision-making process was deciding between writing in an English department or writing in an arts department. And so we had also to do, she didn't have to go physically audition anywhere, but we had to submit a portfolio. So I forgot about spotlighting my own self. So we had to submit a portfolio, and part of oh, I need to ask you one question, Kelly, because you did answer it. Let me go back. Let me go back to you. One of the things that we that I just remembered as I was getting ready to talk about my daughter. One of the questions that I get often is, how do you all afford to make all these trips? And so, Nicola, I know you guys had to go to camps and all that kind of stuff. And Kelly, you guys had to do these auditions. One of the questions we're asked is, how do you afford to make all these trips? So what I wanted you guys to think about for a second as you get ready to answer this is, did you do fundraisers? Is there a specific budget category? Did the family have to sacrifice? Like, how did you afford to make all the trips? Let's go back to Kelly since we just heard from her. Then Nicola, we'll come back to you.
So yeah, the family had to sacrifice. There were things that we just didn't do in order to be able to make, a certain trip, or we stayed with family a couple times when we did the New York audition, and the other things we just we just did it. The Lord provided the money somehow. I don't feel like we went extremely over and above and strapped ourselves or anything, because we're just not those kind of people. But we looked for ways to do it as affordable as we could. So that meant doing unified auditions as opposed to going to every school. Basically, that's about it. I mean, stay wherever we knew someone in a city. If we could stay with them, that saved. We didn't do any fundraising. I did have, my brother was interested in going to Oklahoma. So he, volunteered, hey, you going to Oklahoma? I've never been, I'll take her. All expenses, he paid for, because also that's his goddaughter, and he was invested in her experience as well. So small things like that for us.
How'd you guys do it, Nick?
Yes, we have not done a family vacation. Not only cost, but it's just timing. For basketball, a lot of stuff happens during the summer. So what we would do, I remember 2 occasions specifically where we just said, okay, like if we had to go to Hampton, we just said, okay, well, the whole family come to Hampton. And we just, we'd just do a special dinner or something. It wasn't that we knew we weren't going to ever make it to the beach or that kind of thing. But it was still time for the family to be together, because we were going to be out of the house for about a week. Other than that, I was a real stickler. Whatever organization I was dealing with, AAU or a school, say, okay, what are my costs up front? And just, that was my pet peeve. Don't come to me on Friday saying we have a tournament Saturday and it's $20 a head to get in. I just, that happens in AAU, and you just kind of put your little $5 aside or whatever, change aside. But for the big trips, if I could be part of that planning committee, so I knew they were getting the best bang for their buck, I would do that kind of thing. We joined frequent hotel programs so that we could always get, the best deal. And I think if I go back and I look at the entire cost, it would probably blow my mind. But we had the end in sight. We knew this, but we also knew, like, one specific camp he went to this summer. It was a camp we had been looking at since 9th grade. We knew we couldn't afford it, so it was okay. None of these coaches are going to be able to talk to him in 9th grade. So why am I spending all this money to go? So. And we were upfront with him about that. We were upfront with him about cost. Look, we can't do this because it's just we don't have the money. But what we do have the money for, you need to perform the best you can. You need to be healthy, those kinds of things. And that's and it has paid off. I mean, he decided to go to Widener University in Pennsylvania. And they gave him a very generous package. And even with this COVID stuff coming up, you know, and I'm concerned, you know, if they go to online school, are they going to make it worth my while for my child to be registered there? And then they just pop some money in there. So if he doesn't have to do room and board, you know, his tuition is covered. So, you know, we'll again, and we're just walking by faith, and I'm praying constantly, and I'm like, Lord, you know the need. You know the need. I voice it because we're supposed to pray about it, but he knows the need. And yeah, we didn't do any fundraising for ourselves personally. If a team required you do fundraising to bring down the cost for everybody, yes, we did participate in that, but we didn't do any GoFundMe or anything like that. I don't know why. We just
didn't do it.
We just didn't do it.
Probably busy doing traveling and doing everything else.
Yeah.
Right. But we were frugal. You know, if we went, we might have gone out to eat, you know, while we're on these trips, one meal, pick it, lunch or dinner, you eat out. The rest, there's a Walmart around the corner. We go get some sandwich meat and some bread, along with all the other stuff we brought in the cooler. And I was the bad guy there, because, you know, you're out, everybody wants to eat out, but when they get that first meal, they're like, wow, that is, you know. So
Yeah.
become sandwich and salad families, or rotisserie chicken families.
Yeah, and it's helpful. We, you know, our daughter that we're speaking about is our oldest, so we always had to take the boys with us, or there was the occasional time. I think, Kelly, maybe one time they stayed with you guys. There was the occasional time when we can leave them home, but our travels with our daughter had to include the two little brothers, which meant, you know, we needed a bigger hotel room and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So the expense got to be great. I'm going to speak about from two different angles. My daughter covers two different angles that I think are a little bit unique with regards to her transition from high school to college. The first was the fact that what I was alluding to before, she chose a major that could have been in two different departments. And the reason that was is notable is because it made a lot of difference in what schools she chose and what kind of process she had to go through to be able to be admitted. And then also she chose a test optional route. She was very adamant about not taking standardized tests. So that polarizes Michelle and me. Michelle's family was all about getting the high test scores and that kind of thing. And we, with this child, didn't do that. She had a philosophical opposition, is what I'm going to call it, to standardized tests. She did not feel like they were going to be the best representation of herself as a student. And she basically flat-footed refused to take them, which I don't even know what you do with that, like at 16. Well, I know what you do with it now because I've done it. But when she first started talking about it, all I could think to tell her was, you have to, like, you have to. And she began to discover that there are colleges that were test optional. We found the expression test negative. And she learned early on, maybe the summer between sophomore and junior year, maybe about her junior year, that there were schools that did not require it. And then she felt even more empowered when she realized how many of them were schools for writers who had her kind of art, her kind of vibe. So pretty much she was bent toward this. And like you were saying, Kelly, about Peyton, it was useless to fight it because it was very obvious this is this child's bent. Like we would be forcing her against her natural, God-given, God-designed inclinations if we tried to get her into another kind of mode. So with regards to writing, so Joelle, we always knew Joelle had a voice. She's always been the one to speak out. She has, at least even if she's not talking publicly, she has an opinion about things. She's very introspective and creative. And while she was in high school, she taught herself how to she taught herself an instrument. She did voice lessons. She's been in drama. She's done a lot of that. So she has this overall creative vibe anyway, but never really settled into one particular discipline. And so we knew she was creative somehow, but I thought she was going a different direction entirely. When I'm an English teacher, and so when I would grade her papers, she always said that I was a harsh editor because she had in her mind a creativity, and in my mind, I'm looking for structure and style. And those of you who are homeschoolers may know those expressions, structure and style, right? They go in a particular curriculum, and I'm looking for checklists, and I have a specific rubric, and she wrote completely antithesis to that. She was not that kind of writer. And as time went on, we realized the conflict we were having was that I was editing out her voice. She was trying to speak. She was trying to say something more than just get an essay written. And so we had to, early on, her junior year, I realized I needed to outsource writing, even though I'm a writing teacher. And other people pay me to teach their kids to write. Some people they do writing at home and pay me to grade their children's writing. And I have students in all over not gonna say all over the country, in 3 different states right now, whose papers I grade and assess and have been able to edit for them. And I edit books and all kinds of stuff. I could not do that for my kid because that wasn't what her gift needed. And so I learned early on that I needed to outsource her creative writing. So where, some people go to sports camps and, others have voice coaches or whatever, Joelle had to have a writing coach. And so she had a writing coach from the beginning of her junior year all the way through her senior year. And she went to a writing camp at Stevenson. Just to be able to hone her skill in a way that I was incapable of doing as a homeschooler. And so once she decided writing was what she wanted to do, she's just finished her first year. She attends the University of the Arts in Philadelphia. And I'll talk about how we got to that place. But once she realized writing was what she wanted to do, then we began to try to help her expand that. Like, what kind of writing? Are you going to be a novelist? Do you want to write short stories? What kind of writing do you want to do? And always in the back of her head, she had writing for TV and film. She wanted to write screenplays. She wanted to tell other people's stories. She never really wanted to write for the theater, but always for the screen. The whole idea of making documentaries. So for a little while, she toyed with writing and film at the same time. And so as we were looking for colleges, we, tried to expand out into schools that had both those things. That was on one side, but then the writing part, wanting to be a writer, be a novelist, do short stories and poetry was also there. And for a long time, it seemed like the two worlds were never going to converge. So she applied to, also had a geographical thing that was all her own. She was not interested in any more than 4.5 to 5 hours radius. We pushed her a little bit to look at a school that's about a 5.5, 6 hour drive. It's in central New York because we have a friend who was very instrumental in administration there. And also it's closer to our family where we're from. So she wouldn't be so far away from comfort or safety if she needed to be, if somebody needed to get to her. We thought it was a great school, so we wanted her to look at it. But for the most part, she has wanted to stay geographically right around here where we live in Maryland. Was very opposed to going any further south than Hampton. She had lots of, I think my kid had more, I don't want to do this, on more her list of I don't want to do it were longer than what I do want to do. And we had to trust her. So one of the biggest questions I get is, how do you let them do their thing? We had to just trust her. And it was very hard. It took a lot of prayer, and we fussed a lot, but we had to trust her. And even at the end, we were like, we're still trusting you. Like, who goes to college for creative writing? But we're trusting her that this is the way she's been. And so we're allowing her to do it. And to be honest with you, anybody knows my kid, to say we're allowing her to do it is almost kind of crazy because she was going to do it, right? So so the process of choosing a school for her came down to geography. And then within geography, she looked at schools that were test optional. And of the test optional schools within her geographical, like her radius, then she began to narrow down how the school felt. Joelle is very empathic in the sense that she feels everything. Everything, she can, she's, I don't know how else to describe that, but very much a feeler, and she had to feel a certain kind of way on campus. So Kelly spoke about the vibe. It was all about, and artists are like that anyway. It's all about the vibe. How does it feel? We went to several schools that had really, really good food. She ended up at a school that, and there's no secret, does not have good food, but the campus feels good. It's in a big city, but it's a small campus. And Kelly, we talked about at home how Peyton is in Philadelphia, be in Pittsburgh, and Joelle's in Philadelphia. They're like opposite of the state in the same kind of big city, small school environment. And she chose the schools she wanted to look at based on how they felt. So we looked at several art schools, and we looked at several small liberal arts schools. Remember, the idea for her was test optional. So she found that test optional for her within her geographic location also tended to just affirm or underscore her desire to be on a campus that was not very large. She had to decide between the whole big college, want to be able to go to football games, want to do, that kind of thing, experience versus being able to have art centered, or at least her major centered. And so all of those things were based on her preference. And test optional was a big driver of those. In Maryland, the schools that she chose to apply to were, she applied to Goucher, Stevenson, McDaniel. I think those are the three in Maryland. She applied to Franklin and Marshall, which is in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and Ithaca College, which is in Ithaca, New York, Sarah Lawrence, and actually she applied to Agnes Scott in Georgia, which is way outside of her driving zone, but she humored me and applied there anyway. And her whole goal was she was looking for the writers' school. So the small liberal arts colleges were all about the writers' school. Where do writers go? What do writers get out of this school? And I think that the summer at Stevenson narrowed down for her that she needed to be in an environment where writers were going to love her. Where writers are going to love her, and she was going to love to be with them, right? Where being weird and feeling like you're a little bit odd was not going to be a big deal on campus. And so her summer at Stevenson was phenomenal. At the last, they had a closing ceremony where she did spoken word, and the professors, now these are college professors, my daughter this was her summer between her junior and senior year. The professors walked up to us, and like you were saying, Kelly, they saw stuff in her like we just didn't see. And she stopped letting me read her writing because I was editing her so tough. We didn't ever see this part of her. And of course she was phenomenal, and we recorded it and everything, but when the professors came to us with tears in their eyes, telling us what a phenomenal gift she was and how great of a gift she had and how great she was and what an asset she was to the community, we thought, oh, okay, so we have a thing here. So, we followed her. And I think that homeschool moms need to give ourselves a break, because we spend a lot of time with these kids and we know them 360 degrees. We also have dreams and aspirations for them like any other parent, and we don't maybe always see the light that shines from a different angle. So I want to encourage anybody who's thinking, well, why didn't you know your kid? Or, well, I don't know my kid that way. We didn't either, right? So, and it's, creative writing doesn't get a score. So it wasn't something we could see until we saw it, okay? And so anyway, the test optional was how she chose a lot of the schools. And then her other big criteria was deciding what kind of major she wanted her writing to be. So she decided between art and English, and the big factor there, I think, came down to what she wanted to do with her work. So, and then what she wanted to study. So in the English departments are just another part of the liberal arts department. So in bigger colleges, it's the College of Liberal Arts or Arts and Sciences, right? And on smaller schools, it may just be the English department. But there's lots of literature, lots of being told what to read, as opposed to just given a variety of things to read. And there are different the schools have different approaches to the way they look at writing. Joelle knew she didn't want to be an English major. She is an artist. And the difference between a writer who's an English major and a writer who's an artist really is the purpose of their, I think, of their work, of their creation. She wants to be published. She wants her work to, her books to be in libraries. She wants all of that. But she also has the kind of voice that an artist would have, where she doesn't want to have to stay within convention and rules and norms. She's never been that kind of kid. So her out-the-box thinking took her away from standardized tests. It made her, choose an art major, an art focus to her very structured liberal arts major. The other thing is she decided she didn't want to be industry focused. So when we went to Ithaca, for example, and also Stevenson and Fashion Institute of Technology, who has a writing for a film program, those schools were very driven toward the industry. And she could have been a creative writing major at Stevenson. There was another reason why she didn't choose that, and I can't remember, and I think it's because it's in their English department. But Stevenson's writing for film is very industry driven. Ithaca's writing for TV, film, and emerging media is very industry driven. FIT is very industry driven, and by industry driven, I mean those schools were trying to make the kids work hard, make great connections, get a job. Which, Dad and I are like, yes, work hard, make great connections, get a job, get internships, all of that. And she repelled it. She did not want to be preparing to get a job. She wanted to be honing and perfecting and making larger and more significant her art. So again, big challenge for us as parents, a big challenge for us to trust her. So when it all came down to it, Joelle's two choices, we were actually making the morning of May 1st. Painful, tearful, but her two choices, it came down to Ithaca College in New York, which her dad and I loved, and the University of the Arts in Philadelphia. And Ithaca is a great school. Bob Iger went to Ithaca, Peter Muir went to, and so many people went to Ithaca who have just the greatest connections, and you can be working in this industry and your writing can be on the screen. And when we visited Ithaca, they showed us the writer's room and all the cuts and, it was just fantastic. And my husband and I both wanted to go there, and she did not. The morning of May 1st, we had a very teary conversation. A very teary conversation about Joelle's choice, and we decided to not choose until 6 p.m. when we can all come together and gather around a computer and do the thing where, you post it on Facebook and all that. And it came down to a couple things for her. One of them was Ithaca does not have enough sunny days in a year, and that's important to an artist. Yep. The mood and the way it feels are so, and I'm not saying it's not important to everybody, I'm saying it's very important to an artist. The mood and the way it feels were tremendously important to her. Ithaca doesn't have enough sunny days, Ithaca is industry driven, and Ithaca was further away than she wanted to be from us. Even though other family could get to her quickly, she wanted to be where we could get to her quickly, where she could come home. And the first few months of the semester, she would just say, I need to come home. And she would come home and get in her own bed. She needed that the first semester. And so we were just really grateful to have followed her choice. The University of the Arts was a portfolio building school. So the academic requirements for that school, because it's an art school, are vastly different than for other schools. She needed to to do very well in her school's. This is what they would tell everybody, all the applicants. They told us that, and in Pennsylvania, we were nervous because it's Pennsylvania. The schools in New York, and Kelly, I know you know this, they had some other homeschool hoops that they wanted you to jump through because New York is a different kind of place for homeschoolers. And
Pennsylvania as well.
Yeah, and so, because we didn't have a lot of trouble with Ithaca, but we had some situations with Sarah Lawrence where there were specific New York specific things that they wanted from Joelle. She wasn't jumping through hoops. Certainly if she's not taking standardized tests, she wasn't jumping through any hoops. Right. There were other choices, right? So so for academically, what we were told by University of the Arts is they want to see a student successfully complete their course, their high school course. So whatever your school, whatever was required at your school, we want to know that you took the most rigorous classes you could, that you worked really hard on your art, that you were successful at graduating. They wanted her to have the same thing, because University of the Arts is a university. It's not just an art school. They wanted her to have the 2 years of the same language, the 4 years of math, the 4 years of English, all those things. They wanted her to have great grades. She had a fantastic GPA. She dual enrolled math her senior year. They wanted all of that also, but those things did not weigh as heavily as her portfolio. So creating Joelle's portfolio, her package of work, thankfully, again, we had the writing coach to help us with this. She just had to have a certain number of works in each category. She had to have some poetry. She had to have some short story or flash fiction. Those things overlap, depending on, I think it's the number of words or whatever. And she had to have some fiction. She needed to present that in one, they package it specifically, just like with auditions, there's specific ways to package it. She had to package it specifically. Every school is going to be different. Not every art school has a creative writing major. Her program, I think, has 15 students a year. We quickly got on a first name basis with the head of the department, all the professors. We went there twice. We visited during the visit, like open house in the fall, and then we went to accepted students weekend. We made sure we stayed in their faces. We did lots of emailing. And when it all came down to it, Joelle had her choice of 5 schools. University of the Arts was not the one that gave her the most money. She got the most money from McDaniel. McDaniel would have been, Joelle almost would have made money to go to, like, made money off McDaniel. She got into the honors house and everything for McDaniel. Goucher was also very, very generous in their package. University of Arts is the most expensive of the schools. So she got the same amount of money across the board eventually, because we did like what the Blakes did, and we negotiated a lot. But then we were looking at apples and oranges, because those schools are liberal arts schools and University of Arts is an art school, and that's a little different. But when it all came down to it, her space between what her initial scholarship offer was and what she had, what the cost of attendance was large. So we had to do some other things. She entered contests. She, of course, applied to the scholarship committee at the church, and just all kinds of other things. Writers need to enter contests. Writers need to enter contests, just like ball players need to go to camps and be a part of leagues, just like musical theater people need to do musical theater in lots of different shows. Writers need to enter contests because it gives them experience with other eyes looking at your work, but it also gives them the motivation to write something. I think it motivates. Contests motivate, or let me say, speak within to my daughter specifically. Contests motivated her to package her work in a way that put her in the best light. It wasn't just like, this is what I wrote, this is my thing, whatever. It's not your journal, right? There's word limits and those kind of things. Contests motivated her to package herself and package her work, and it also gave her the feedback of other readers. So she did a scholastic contest and several others, and some had money awards attached and some didn't. And her coach, her senior year, she did a thesis, basically what would be like a senior project, where she was published. So she has written quite a few, had quite a few pieces published into a book, and she did a lot of work to get herself ready to be respected and seen as a serious artist writer. So this year on campus, she has been able to see that her interest lies heavily in poetry. So she loves her poetry classes, and she's doing a lot with poetry. And again, I'm trusting, I don't know one very famous, I know famous poets, but I don't know one very rich poet, right? So we're trusting that poetry is going to be something she can do. But another thing that made Joelle choose University of the Arts is that they can cross all the art lines. So she's a writing major, but she takes dance classes and voice lessons and all kinds of other things, and she's able to do that because their school has no lines. They do have majors and they concentrate, but they don't have boxes they have to stay in or boundaries, and that was very attractive to Joelle. The other thing, which happened on here, which none of us knew about, so this is why you visit. The other thing was University of the Arts has a very significant art therapy program, which therapy appeals to Joelle. Mental health is one of her passions. She writes for mental health. She writes for her own mental health. The Stevenson summer week program that she did was, they talked a lot about the writer, the artist, mental health, and University of Arts has their mental health program in terms of having counselors and therapists available to the students is probably as big, if not bigger, than their student health center where you go when you're sick and you need an antibiotic or whatever. Mental health is very important to artists, and that's something that she knew instinctively inside, but didn't know it was a thing for artists until she got there. And so that's another thing that underscored for us that this is the right place for her, because mental health is important, and she can see herself doing art therapy through writing and that kind of thing. So that's definitely a natural minor for her. I was trying to think, so you ladies helped me, neither of you are muted. I was trying to think if there was anything else that would be important to know. I want to talk a little bit about the test optional route. So I said before that Joelle was just philosophically opposed. She read a lot of things about biases with tests and about why, and she just decided she was not math strong and really had an attitude toward math that she was not going to she just wasn't going to do it. Like, she would rather not do it, even though I think on the verbal parts and even with the ACT, because a lot of it is subject specific, she would have done well with some prep. She just was not interested. And she actually did, I threw her cold into the ACT. Like, I told her Friday, tomorrow morning, you're going to go take the ACT, and that almost ruined us in terms of relationship. She found the environment hostile, lots of yelling and screaming from adults to children that she was not prepared for. She didn't like that at all at that high school. She liked the way it felt, and I don't think she did well because she didn't feel well, but we never submitted those scores. And so I think that was part of the problem with Stevenson, now that I think about it. She got accepted into the school in both the writing program and the film program, but their money was tied to test
scores. Yeah.
She gave them the thumbs down immediately. But with regards to her choosing not to do standardized tests, we had a hard talk about the limitations. And this was before we really had explored how many test optional schools there are, and that number grows every year. But we talked a lot about her being realistic about limitations, and she was fine. She actually said to me, if I have to leave Bridge, because she was doing the tutorial that we do, if I have to leave Bridge and do 2 years of community college so that I can then transfer into a 4-year school, I'm okay with that. And it wasn't that, she wasn't thinking Fatzinger formula, right? She wasn't thinking this is the way to do it. She was thinking, if I have to, because I refuse to, then I'm okay. Once she decided that she was completely fine with the limitations, then we were completely fine with the limitation, because as long as you, in our house, we just want you to have an experience of going to college. So far, we think all three are looking forward to it, and we don't have to fight anybody to make them go. We want everybody to go to college, and so even if that was going to be her limitation, she was fine with that. So we were fine with that, because the AccuPlacer, of course, will get you into the community college. She met with a tutor all summer long. Her summer between junior and senior year, she took the AccuPlacer. Senior year, she did the college classes to finish math and get her first math credit, because she didn't want this was her thought too. If I have to have college level math, I don't want it to be the enemy to my scholarships, because she has a really high GPA. Other than, even with math at home, we worked toward mastery. So her grades in math were great because she worked toward mastery, and you didn't finish the course until you got good grades in math. That's the homeschool privilege, and that's what we did. And so when she was dual enrolling, she had a really good GPA, and she worked really hard to complete her college level math at Anne Arundel Community College. We took the advice of some other moms and went to Anne Arundel instead of PG specifically for math. And she worked hard. She struggled. It felt like she worked hard. She worked hard. We paid a lot for tutors to get her through that, but she was able to go to college with no math requirement left. So she doesn't have to take any math in college, and she's really excited about that because her whole thing is, I want to concentrate on my art. So although freshman composition is not something that she's interested in doing so much, she's doing well in it. She's become they're on a first name basis at their college, which we're a little bit more traditional as parents than that. So we call everybody with Miss or something. But actually they either call their professors by their first name or they refer to them by their last name, which is not so bad. But she and this one, she had the same professor for her college composition class, and she's only had to take these 2, and now she's done with them, and they've set up a great relationship. And she followed her bet. And my message is, if you have an out-of-the-box thinker, trust them and follow their bet. Just follow their bet, because like Sam said, if you put it in their court, like, this is what you're doing, and this is what the life you have to live with. And of course, no parent wants their child to make a choice that's going to be, negative or bad or not turn out well for them. But once everybody has that on the table, then you can feel more comfortable going with the choice. We have always told our kids, when the last one who is a rising 9th grader is, well, I say this, my husband doesn't say this. When this last one graduates, we're downsizing to a 1-bedroom with a den and a small car, in a building with no lawn, because we need to take care of fewer things.
I'll say this to you. They don't leave.
Well, that, and my kids threaten not to bring the grandkids to visit if I downsize into that small.
Right.
Yeah. I gotta keep the size so my grandkids have places to stay.
Right. Right. They need to be able to escape to us, right? So of course, we're not going to do that. But I've said to them, I want you to be able to go and go, right? Stay gone. Because I left at 17 for my freshman year of college, and I stayed away. And of course, I had a different kind of home life and everything than they do. But I want them to be able to be settled and as independent as possible and do their own thing. And a lot of that has to do with them being confident in the choice that they made.
Mm-hmm.
And so our goal was to help Joelle be confident in the choice that she made. Now, let me tell you about this kid, and we're going to end here unless you two have any questions that you want to talk about. I will ask you both this, but I want to say that Joelle is a very independent thinker anyway. She always has been. And one of the biggest or the hardest parts of her being home because of the pandemic is the loss of her independence. Not having to come back into rules and that kind of thing, but she was independent. She was making her own space. They were managing, she had roommates and they were managing their own time and all of that. And she misses Philadelphia so much because she really loves Philly. And she misses Philadelphia so much, and she misses her roommates, but they, can keep in touch. But she misses her space. And I'm so excited about that, because what it says to me is whether we did it on purpose, and we didn't really have we taught her to cook and clean and do our own laundry and manage her money, but we wanted to produce children who could make it on their own. Not every personality is bent toward that. We joke about number 2 being the one who will commute to a big school even if he could stay on campus because he likes to be with us. But we want to make sure that he can do that. If he needs to, he can go away. And we don't know what he might decide in 2 more years. But I feel like, and of course she's only finishing her first year, and half of it, a little less than half of it has been back home. But one of the questions that came to us was, ladies, how did you, and both of you have graduates other than the one we've been talking about today. What did you do, or what gave you the confidence to know that they're okay? They're going to be okay. Like, what did you do specifically to make sure they were going to be okay? Not just in college, but what was your preparation? I remember talking to Kelly about this when Kristen was a senior. Like, have I taught her everything? Like, what does she know? All this she needs to know. Looking back now, how do you feel about like that? What advice would you give to parents who want to make sure that their kids are going to be okay and not need to call you for, to bail them out of things you thought they already knew? I guess I could ask the question 100 different ways, but Kelly, you want to address that? How did you guys handle that with Kristen, and what do you think about it so far?
That's a hard one to answer. I do remember feeling like that, ooh, did we teach her everything? But there's so much to be taught that no parent can teach your child everything. You just,
Right.
and the world is constantly evolving and changing. So things that you think that you taught them are irrelevant, maybe. I would say with Kristen, we always knew that she's super practical and logistical and has a good head on her shoulders. So that wasn't like a major concern for us. There were things that came up and she just called and we talked her through things, but those were not things that we would have thought to teach her anyway. Those are things that just being away at college, you just go through. And also, I think that I just had a conversation with her a couple of days ago that her being away from home in an out-of-state college has forced her. She's always been independent for the most part, but she's always been able to fend for herself, I'll say that. But we were always there to be her safety net if needed. But being away without us there, she easily transitioned into, okay, well, I need to be the one to go and talk to this professor, or I need to be the one to go and see about this. And if I'm struggling mentally right now, I need to make the decision that it is okay for me to go and talk to somebody, the mental health people, because we did talk about all of that. We ran into times where she decided to change her major, and she went to NC State wanting to be a zoology major and hit organic chemistry, and it was very hard, and it was not worth her mental stress to do organic chemistry or any other chemistry for the remainder of undergrad and into graduate school. So mental health won over being stressed out about chemistry and following that career path, which she enjoyed, but she wasn't married to. So for parents, I would just say, don't worry about teaching them everything, because you can't. It's kind of out of your hands, but teach whatever the Lord brings to your mind to teach them. For example, this last semester with Peyton, I decided I wanted her to know about economics. So I just bought the semester-long Knotgrass economics curriculum, and we're trucking through it, and it's been really eye-opening for both of us. We've learned so much, and especially with the industry that she's going to, where there are unions and there are, roach apartments, and why all those things exist and how they do exist and all that kind of thing. It's been really good. So I would say just rest in the fact that the Lord's going to put on your heart what He thinks you need to teach your child before they leave your home, and the rest you just put it in His hands. And FaceTime is so easy to do.
Yeah, I was thinking two things came to my mind, and then I'm going to go to Nicola for this question, because your kids are the oldest of the three of us. I was thinking two things. First of all, I don't know that mental health was such a talking point when we were going to college, but it is now, and they live in a different kind of stressor in terms of their environment, right? And I one of the things I wanted to talk about with regards to our experience with Joelle was we began to see how stress affected her, probably the way some kids don't see it until college. We began to see that stress in high school because, she's my oldest, so I wanted her to, be really good at everything. And I'm responsible. And so you got to get good grades and all the things. And we did a lot of stress, and, and my husband is, science and medicine. And so he was just like, math. And she was, I don't want to do math. And it was a whole lot of that in our house. And, mental health won a lot of times with us, and it won a lot of times with us. It won a lot of times when it came to her preparation through high school, and so that's another reason why we know University of the Arts was for her, and it was a gift to her, because they said to us time and time again, what we're learning, what they've learned about college students and also about artists, and they have some real technical majors, they have business and all that kind of stuff too. So it's not just everybody who's like creating art. But what they learned early on was students who have less stress about things with regards to how they'll be accepted in the future in terms of things, things that are less, I can't remember the expression they use, but the things that are formulaic in terms of like GPA and that kind of thing, when they feel a pressure for that, and they internalize it as their like personality, like I'm not good at math, so I'm not good, or that kind of thing. It puts them in a mental health space they don't need to be in, and then it damages a whole lot of other stuff. So we had to kind of give Joelle those kind of breaks leading on to make her own decisions, and she feels more empowered to do that now because we were able to let her do that as a high schooler. And when people ask like what academic path did you take, because she's got so many scholarships, her scholarships were 4 years, a large amount of money from like every school offered her at least, I think her smallest scholarship was like $31,000 over 4 years. And people look at that kind of money, especially when they're looking at like a $40,000 school, that's a lot of money, right? Or in some places a full ride. And they were asking like, how did you prepare her for that? We basically wanted her to go to college. So we used college prep thought processes. You need to do 4 years of this and 4 years of that and 2 years of this and 2 years, all of that. And then I coupled that with what do I want her to know? So I wanted her to know she studied Africa and African American history because those things were important to me. We did a survey of world religions because those things were important to me. And so I tried to influence her learning about things, content from a content standpoint, but also keeping the idea that we don't ever want colleges to look at, she didn't care about it, want colleges to look at your package and say, you're not something that we're looking for, because we limited her studying. And with that, balancing or trying to become harmonious with keeping her mental health. And I think that because she is cognizant of that, she manages it. At least I think she's managing it pretty well. What do you think about that, Nicola, in terms of helping them to be what they need to have before they leave home, and be who they are going to be when they get there?
Well, we did once you figure out your kid and figure out what they're good at and what they're not good at, and like Courtney was an excellent writer, but she was an even better orator. Like she, we went through CC and she did their what was it, debate class. And I was like, okay, this kid, I see her as a lawyer because she's able to, she's great at research. She's great at presenting her information. She didn't see that. She chose to go into business communications. She was one who math was not her thing. But not knowing that in business communication there still is a level of math, but she was able to make it through that. My first two went to Stevenson, and they were there their first year. They stayed on campus, but then money is an issue, and my thing was, it's 45 minutes away. You have a car. I pay room and board here. It's called mortgage. So unless you're able to raise that other money, you're going to have to live at home. Not only are you going to have to live at home, you're going to have to work and pay the difference, because this is your education. So that was their thing. So they've been home since sophomore year until the end, and thrived. And they said it was hard. They've both decided that when they have children, they will figure out how their children won't have to go through that and work and 1 and 2 jobs and commute and all that. Wonderful. I applaud you for that. Hopefully the price doesn't go up.
We always think we need to do something different when we don't have kids and when we're not paying mortgages, and we always think we're going to do something different.
Right. So mental health wise, what we did with them is, I said, okay, I have to, we're in the age of texting and FaceTime and all that. I have to talk to you at least once a week. And we would just set up a date, Sundays, or, look at your schedule, tell me what works for you. I would have to actually talk to you. And the rest of the times I would text, once a week I try to text something encouraging. If I knew exams were coming up, just really encourage, because in my head, they're coming across a lot of negativity. They would describe to me what classmates were saying. Courtney got into something with somebody one day because she did a presentation on the fact her parents had been married for, I think it was 20 something years at that point. And, and it was clear that she was a child of one, all her siblings were from one father, one mother. And, did this whole presentation, got an A on it, but then had a classmate walk up to her later and really was like, you're just showing off, and just really negative. And I remember that incident specifically, her calling me, and was just, why are people so mean? I said, well, we talked through it, and she was able to come through that. So they had, those kinds of things, or where people, we've always been a family. If you say you're going to do something, if you commit to something, you carry it out. You're a man or woman of your word. Well, they found out that the world is not like that. People say they're going to do things and then they don't show up, or they show up and they don't participate, or that famous group project where you end up doing the group project and everybody gets to, so just kind of keeping the lines of communications open, and recognizing there were things that they were not bringing to us and they would try to work out. I don't know if they ever visited the mental health things at their school. I know they each had a small group of friends that they still have now. So, and just continue to pray for them.
Yeah, I think that I think that the consensus maybe between the three of us too, and I think that Michelle and Sam would also agree to this, that the thing to do to, well, I don't know, Sam's, well, yeah, I think so, because she talked about keeping them close and having her grandkids around. But I was going to say, I think the thing to do is to remember that going away to college, even graduating from college, is not like severing a limb. They don't have to be entirely independent their entire lives. I mean, how many, I'm missing my mom every day. How many, and I'm 50, like how many of us still want to talk to, we need advice, we still want to be in a relationship. And so they don't have to be prepared for everything when they leave, because you're not gonna disappear from their life. It's not like they won't have you to reach back on. I wanted to just, if you two don't have any final words, I want to draw this conversation to a close. Okay.
I do have one.
Okay, I'll let you do that. But I wanted to draw the conversation to a close because I think the video is going to get long. But if you do have some final words, let's do that first. So go ahead, Nicola.
Ron and I have something that we are saying around here. We say that we are now on the advisory committee. Ron came up with that. Once they turn 18, because once they turn 18, anything they do, they're going to kind of be responsible for it. When we go for that physical at 18 or any other doctor's appointment after that, I'm handing them the form. And they ask, who's the responsible party? You are. Yes, you're your dad's insurance, but at the end of the day, you're responsible. So just kind of making those transitions very clear. But we're at the point now, you come to us with something, or we see you doing something, we hear something in conversation, we may add our 2 cents, but they understand they still will make that decision, and they still will suffer the consequences, if any, and we will celebrate with them, if and when there's a good outcome. But that's the saying around here. We're on the advisory committee. So
yeah, that's been tough for me.
But you say you have standards for your home. They know the standards for your house. They know they can't come in. Like I said, if you're going to be out at 2:00, stay where you're at. If you're coming home, give me a call and say, hey, Mom, I'm on the way home. But it will not be that you're just gone and I don't know where you're at. I have a tracker on my 18-year-old. Why? Because I still pay for his phone and I still pay for his car. The older two, Ron, we're not paying anything for them, but Ron still can figure out where they are on their cell phones. And then you get the once in a while where, Mom, we didn't know where you were. We were trying to track you. Well, I'm grown. So,
Yeah.
But in this day and time where people do get snatched up,
it's just a need. You need to. I don't even know where you are.
Yeah.
Or at
Yeah.
least where you're not. Like my thing, we talked about this with regards to Philadelphia. It's such a big city and so volatile. University of the Arts is in the middle of all of it. Like it's right in the thick of the theater district, right at they're on the, I think I want to call it the north side of City Hall, if you guys can picture Philly. And if I hear about something in Philadelphia, I need to know that you weren't there. Like even if I don't know, I can't pinpoint you, at least I know you weren't where the building blew up or the
Right.
sinkhole happened or, you know, the police were, you know, so that is also very important for my mental health.
Exactly.
How about for my mental health, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so Kelly, any last words?
One quick thing I wanted to say, Peyton had some concerns about the SAT as well. She wasn't in Joelle's camp where she didn't want, where she refused to take it, but she was concerned about it because we also appealed to try to get accommodations because she's got an eye thing and maybe some slight dyslexia. Anyway, we didn't get the appeal. She had to take it. And her SAT scores were okay. They weren't great. I know Michelle Herring mentioned that typically the second time they take it, they do better. Was not the case with Peyton.
Not over here either.
Yeah, second time she took it, she did worse. So we set the first score,
She
but
made it worse.
Yeah, it's a stressful test. Cortland said he would start to sweat, and so he spent the first 5 minutes deep breathing. Well, you know, 5 minutes on the SAT is a pretty big deal. And finally, after the third time, he's like, "I'm not taking it again. I'm not taking it again.
Right.
I'm pay for it. I'm not taking it."
The first time they take it, even though we had taken the PSAT and they kind of wanted them to be in a testing environment before they got to the actual SAT, so that wouldn't be a new thing for them. Still, the first time she took it, you know, not having, even though she studied for it and did all the Khan Academy preparations, going in, not knowing exactly what to expect, or I don't know, maybe that helped her do better. But the second time going in, knowing what to expect, knowing how many hours you're going to be there, knowing, even though she came out the second time feeling like she did better, the scores were not better. And so we were surprised by that because we assumed, oh yeah, you know, most people say the second time you take it, you always do better the more you take it. Not the case. And also, that actually didn't affect some of the schools. She got into big schools with SAT scores that were up here, and hers were not. Some of them were average. Some of them she didn't make that range, but she got it anyway.
Exactly.
So that's just to say they don't base everything on those scores.
Right.
They are a lot of the colleges that do say we look at the whole student. Our experience with Peyton, you know, we found that, okay, yeah, they really did look at the whole student because based on, you know, the essay score, you wouldn't have gotten in there, you know, kind of thing. So that.
And remember, they have quotas they have to meet.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, you know, so for Cortland, the sports helped, but for the program he wanted to get into, we knew what SAT scores he needed. And, you know, he's in a situation now where he's going in kind of like he's got to prove himself.
Yeah. I think also what you were saying earlier, Nicola, about Portland shaking hands with people. And
oh, yeah.
Things that they do when they meet people in person or even on paper, the essays that they wrote, the letters of recommendation that they got, those are also weighed heavily. It's their character. Their, you know, their hearts shining through from those recommendations and from their own writings that I think the admissions counselors can see above and beyond SAT scores and even GPAs.
Right, and with sports, what I didn't realize is, you know, like you have to list out all the coaches that your child has played with since they were 14. I don't know why it didn't cross my mind what this was all about. But I started getting calls from coaches, hey, such and such called me, and this is a 7th grade coach. And so they are calling and checking up. They're checking social media. That's the one thing we didn't talk about. They wanted his social media page. And they told him, we're going to check your social media. We're going to check who you're in contact with. So that's another thing our kids really need to be aware of. And also, you know, my mom used to say, show me your friends and I'll tell you who you are. And so,
Yeah.
that's what I said to him. So he's really kind of watching, and he'll see, the coaches will post on his page, hey, good game, or, that kind of thing. So that's another piece that maybe is a whole nother
Yeah. I think
topic.
it might be a whole other topic.
Yeah.
We've been together a long time, ladies. I appreciate you so
It's
much.
for me.
But thank you so much for hanging out with me today and for doing this video. We're going to just say bye-bye to everybody who's watching. Hopefully you'll watch some of the other, there's workshops and panels and lots of great information for this homeschool information fair. And hopefully something that we've said will help you in your journey of helping your high schooler or your homeschooler go from high school to college. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, Nicole.